Alright, so this course comes bundled with a collection of CSV and Excel files to use. These are basically storing the data sets that we'll be molding and manipulating as we move throughout the modules in this course. And everything is bundled and zipped up together in this single download, which is the pandas.zip file. So once it's downloaded to your computer, I have it dragged here to my desktop. You can just unpack it by double-clicking on it, and it's going to give you a pandas folder. So now if I open this pandas folder, I'll see all of the CSV files that are attached to this course. And we'll be using basically all of them one by one as we move through the modules. Now my strong recommendation is to create all of your Jupyter notebooks in the exact same folder where all of these files are. That makes the file import process as simple as possible. You don't have to reference a directory, you don't have to navigate to a different folder. It's as simple as writing the CSV or Excel name and telling Pandas to import it, and if it's in the exact same folder as the Jupyter notebook, the file is very easily imported. So we're going to be creating all of our Jupyter notebooks in this central Pandas folder. Now where you place this pandas folder is entirely up to you. It's just important that you keep everything in this one central folder as you work through the course. To keep things simple, I'm going to keep this pandas folder directly on my computer's desktop or my desktop folder. That just gives it really simple ease of access, but feel free to move it wherever you'd like on your computer. Just make sure that you create all of your Jupyter notebooks in this pandas folder. Speaking of creating Jupyter notebooks, let's take the rest of the time in this lesson to explore how we start and shut down a Jupyter notebook server, how we open a notebook, edit it, save it, and then finally shut down for the day. So this lesson will take you through the process of what you should be doing basically every single time you're following along with these lessons and you're picking back up from where you left off. So our first step is going to be opening a new terminal window. So I'm going to click my terminal down here. And of course, we're going to have to begin by referencing our root environment in Anaconda so that we launch everything from there. So our command is going to be the exact same as it was when we updated all our libraries. We're going to follow a consistent source activate root command. And once we type that, root should appear in parentheses to the left, and that indicates that we are in that pandas environment. So there it is right here. And once we're at this prompt, in order to launch the Jupyter Navigator, which is basically the front-end interface that allows us to create and manipulate Jupyter notebooks, we just want to type Jupyter Notebook. Jupyter spelled with a Y. There is a space between those two words. And when you press enter, you're going to see a lot of lines of code appear. And basically this is going to launch in your default browser on your computer. So for me that's Chrome. So shortly I'll see a Chrome window open up. There it is. And it's going to give you a view that looks something like this. So this is your front end view. This is your Jupyter Navigator. And if you look at the URL bar here, you can see that it says localhost. So what this means is this isn't actually a web page on the internet. This is rather a web page that's being served up by a local server that's running on your computer. You may ask, why do we need a local server? Well, whenever we write Python code, whenever we send a command, we basically need something that's going to receive it, interpret it, and respond to us. And that server is basically what's going to be doing that command. So in order to run Jupyter, in order to run pandas, we're going to need to have a server running. Now all of this is taken care of behind the scenes. If we check our terminal right now, in fact, we'll see that there is code that tells us that we're basically in the middle of running a server, and it's going to be running until we shut it down. So the browser is basically just the front-end interface to that server, and everything should be good. It's not anything like you have to technically configure anything or set up any complicated stuff. As soon as this page loads and you have this, your server is up and running, and it's as simple as that. Now if I look here, this is basically just showing me the directory of my computer. So my goal right now when I access this is to navigate to the folder or directory where I'm going to be storing all of my CSV files as well as all of the upcoming Jupyter notebooks that we'll be creating. So as I mentioned for myself, I stored my pandas folder rather on my desktop. So I'm going to click desktop, and there's my pandas folder. And here I see all of my CSV and Excel files listed right here. So right here is where I want to create all of my Jupyter notebooks throughout the course. How do we create a Jupyter notebook? What you want to do is hover your mouse to the right, click this new button, and select the notebook that says Python Conda root. That's basically selecting that you want to create a notebook using the Conda root environment, which has Python 3.5 installed. So I'm going to click this. It's going to create a new Jupyter notebook in a brand new tab. So this is basically going to be our work environment. This is what our code editor is going to look like throughout the course. And over the course of the next couple lessons, we're definitely going to spend a lot of time getting familiar with all the technical features and the toolbars and the shortcuts. In this lesson, I just want to show you just the rudimentary basics to get started. So first of all, let's give this notebook a name. So I'm going to click this untitled up here. It's going to bring up a box, and let's call this one test. And click OK. And I'm just going to execute a very simple command here. Don't worry too much about how this works, but I'm just going to execute very simple Python code. I'm going to write 1 + 1 in this little cell right here, and then to execute this, I'm going to hold the Shift key and press Enter. And you can see directly below the cell I'm going to get an output of 2. So this is the part where we're actually sending this command of 1 + 1 to the server, and it's responding with a return of 2. So it's the server is communicating back to us, we're all good. So basically, if you open up my tutorials, you can just follow along with my code and what I'm writing in each cell as you move along, and then let's say you're done for the day, and you're ready to stop and shut everything down. So the first thing, of course, is to save, and the way that you save in a Jupyter Notebook is with either the keyboard shortcut Command S, or you can also go to File and select Save and Checkpoint right here. And that's going to save the notebook. Now here's where it gets tricky. Here's where you have to memorize a few critical components. First of all, closing this tab right here, it's Test, it's our current Jupyter Notebook. Simply closing the tab does not shut the notebook down. The server is still maintaining a live connection to it. You can see that that notebook that we created is now featured right here. It's called test.ipynb. So Jupyter Notebooks will have that file extension .ipynb, which is short for IPython Notebook, which is sort of the deprecated name for Jupyter Notebooks. They're basically referring to the same thing. And you can see this file has now appeared in this directory, and it has this glowing green notebook icon as well as this keyword running on the right. And that basically means that that notebook has not been fully shut down. In fact, if we click it, it's just going to launch again. This is how you open a file, for example, when you're coming back. And the connection is still maintained, so none of the stuff in memory has been lost. So when you close a tab, in order to actually shut the notebook down, what you have to do is navigate to this running tab up top. And below here, under this notebook section, you're going to see a list of all the notebooks that are currently running. Right now we have one, but this may certainly be a longer list of multiple notebooks eventually. And to the right of each notebook, you'll see this bright orange shutdown button. Press that shutdown button to finally close the notebook and close the server's connection, and repeat that process for every single notebook. Keep in mind, make sure that you save each notebook before you shut it down, because if you don't, then that work may be lost. So here's the other final component that you have to memorize. Let's say we're now done for the day, we've saved and we've closed the Jupyter Notebook itself. Simply closing this navigator and then closing Chrome, which is my browser, does not finalize everything. The server is still running. If you look at the terminal, you can see that these lines of code are still active. In order to finally shut everything down and kind of end it for the day, for the session, you have to use this Control-C command to stop the server. Now when I press this, I'm going to get a prompt that's going to ask me for confirmation. Again, it's going to ask me for a Y or an N, a yes or a no if I want to shut it down. And that's going to be on something like a 3 or 5 second prompt, so you do have to put it in fairly quickly. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to press Control-C and then press Y when the prompt appears and press Enter, and now it's shut down. You can see this message appeared right here, shut down this notebook server, yes or no. Here's where I input the Y, and then finally below it says shutdown confirmed, and it shuts everything down. And once you're back at the main terminal prompt, you're basically all set. At that point, you can close the terminal with something like Command Q, and that basically brings you back to where you started. So this will basically be your process at the start of each day. You're going to open the terminal, you're going to type that source activate root command, followed by Jupyter Notebook. That's going to open the Jupyter Navigator, which is basically the view of your computer. In that view, you want to navigate to the folder where you have all of your CSV files and what will be your Jupyter Notebooks. Here I actually have my test notebook right here, so let me go ahead and delete it since we're not going to be needing it. So let me just move it to trash. But once you navigate to this folder, you want to either create the Jupyter Notebook if it's brand new, or simply open the old one that you were working with. At that point, you're going to work and create some new cells and execute some Python code. Make sure you save for the day, then close that notebook tab, and then remember to navigate to that running tab in the main Jupyter Navigator and click the orange shutdown button to finalize the shutdown. Once you close Chrome, remember to open your terminal and press Control-C and confirm with Y to shut down that server that's basically returning all of our output to us. And once that's done, close down the terminal, and that's the whole operation of basically starting and stopping the server and using it to basically run a Jupyter Notebook. So that completes the Mac setup part of the course. So this is the point where the Windows tutorials and the Mac tutorials basically meet up, and everything from this point forward is going to be unanimous. It can function in any version, in any operating system rather, Windows or Mac. So this completes the Mac setup process, and we're all ready to get started with exploring Jupyter Notebook, and then after that, diving into Python, and then, of course, Pandas, the main subject of the course. So I'll see you in the very next lesson.